Hello and welcome everyone to today's lesson where we will be continuing to review the tenses. Today we're going to look at the present perfect continuous tense I've been doing and contrast it with present perfect I've done. So starting with formulation. Of course, both tenses are formulated with the auxiliary verb have. For present perfect continuous, we add been doing, and for present perfect, we add done. Don't forget that for he, she, and it, you need to change have to has. Right, now let's look at the concept. Let's remind ourselves of what we saw in the previous lesson. First, the difference between present continuous and present perfect continuous. As you know, present continuous refers to a temporary action, an action in progress. For example, she's currently working on a restoration project, whereas present perfect continuous is also an action in progress, but now we're insisting that this action has been in progress for some time from the past moment until now. For example, she's been working on this project since March. Now, in the last lesson, when we looked at these two tenses, present continuous and present perfect continuous, we also mentioned something very important, and that was state verbs. Remember that state verbs, verbs that describe a state instead of an action, don't take continuous tenses. When we said that they switch to the simple form of the same tense. So, for example, the verbs be and have are two very important state verbs. And because we can't put them in the present perfect continuous tense, they automatically switch to the present perfect. So we can't say he has been being the top student the whole term. So we said he has been the top student for the whole term. You see the present perfect simple now in this context. Or with the verb have, we can't say I have been having a toothache for the past 3 days. Have been having switches to I have had. Present perfect continuous switches to present perfect because have is a state verb. And we saw some other common state verbs: think, believe, know, like, want, belong, own, and exist. This means that the present perfect simple tense has two very different concepts. When we use it with a state verb, it's a state that started in the past and continues. For example, I have had this car since 2023. We have known each other for 15 years. She has been an architect for 3 years. This tradition has existed for hundreds of years. Lee has wanted to be a pilot since he was a little boy. So states, situations that continue. But the form is present perfect simple because we can't use the continuous with state verbs. But the second and very different concept of present perfect is when we use it with an action verb. Now it refers to a finished action, but without a specific past time reference. The action is in the past, but we don't know or say when exactly. For example, I've already had, which means eaten in this case, lunch, an action, not a state. We have met each other recently. She has been to, which means visited, Malaysia 3 times. This tradition has returned in the past few years. Lee has just trained as a pilot. Let's look at some common time expressions. So we saw that with present perfect continuous, we have expressions like for 2 days, since April, since I arrived, all day, the whole week, in the past or last few weeks, today, this week, recently, lately. Notice that my hand moves from the past to the present. Whereas with present perfect, there are some very different time expressions. Already, but means finished, before now. Not yet, just, never, twice since April, 3 times in the past or last few weeks, today, this week, recently, lately. So notice that the last 4 expressions work both with present perfect continuous and present perfect, depending on whether the action continues or is over. Now, An important note on time expressions: don't expect to always see or hear a time expression in every sentence, because the tense itself is enough to clarify the time frame. So we may hear or say, she's been working on a new project. This implies for some time. We're using the present perfect continuous because we want to say for some time. Or we've met. You don't have to say already. Already is implied. Now, an important reminder that we saw in the last lesson, that we have a very special use of the present perfect continuous without a time frame, and that is when an action has just ended, but its undesirable, unwanted effect is still in the present. Now, because the action has just ended, we logically would think that it should be the present perfect, simple, finished action. But this is a very special use of the present perfect continuous because we have an undesirable effect in the present. We mustn't use the present perfect, but the present perfect continuous. For example, in this dialogue, why are your hands dirty? Have you been gardening? Not have you gardened. Yes, and my back hurts because I've been bending down too much. Although you're not bending down anymore or gardening, we continue to use the present perfect continuous, not the simple form. Right. The next point I'd like to mention about these two tenses are with verbs like live, work, smoke, etc. When these verbs express a fact or a habit, they're usually treated as state verbs. So, for example, you would say, I live in Cambridge, if that's your permanent place of residence, rather than I'm living in Cambridge. So I live in Cambridge, and also it's better to use the present perfect simple. I've lived there all my life. Or he works in an IT firm, a fact. He has worked there for a year. So simple forms. She smokes, a habit. She's smoked since she was 20. But of course, these verbs can also refer to temporary situations, actions in progress, and in that case, we usually treat them as action verbs, and they can go in the continuous tenses. For example, present continuous, I'm currently living with my sister, and present perfect continuous, I've been living with her for a week. At the moment, now he's working on the new website. He's been working on it since Monday. She's smoking a new brand of cigarettes now. She's been smoking this brand for a few days. A small note is that if this difference between long-term fact or habit or short-term temporary situation is irrelevant, you can use either form. So there's no difference really in the idea between saying he's worked there for a year and he's been working there for a year. Or I've been living here for 3 weeks, or I've lived here for 3 weeks. They have exactly the same concept, the same idea in situations like this, with verbs like this. And finally, one important note is that the present perfect continuous tense is not very common in the negative form. It's possible, it's correct, but it's not common. If we want to say that an action has not taken place for some time, we just usually use the simple form. So we can say it hasn't been snowing at all this winter, but it sounds a bit strange. It's easier, better, more common to say it hasn't snowed all this winter. Or instead of saying I haven't been watching any TV since Tuesday because there is no action, why insist on it is I haven't watched any television since Tuesday. Right, that's the end of this lesson on the differences in concepts, concept differences between present perfect simple and present perfect continuous. I hope that has answered some questions that you may have been asking yourself. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. For more on this topic, click here. Remember to also check out my complete online course, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy studies!